Good morning, class. I'm just starting out this morning with doing 2.4. So on 2.4, there's only 3 questions. So what I did is I just went through, and I'm going to go ahead and just do the examples that are given for you so you can walk through the process. So there's one particular thing that you need to have in your toolkit. So I'm going to go over that real quick. So when we're dealing with rational functions, so a rational function is when it's set up like a fraction. So anytime you have a fraction type of equation, there are some limitations. So remember our domain restrictions. There's some limitations that we're having to deal with. And the main limitation is that we can't have 0 in the bottom of our fraction. So that's something to just kind of keep in mind, put it on the back burner, always be aware that you cannot have 0 in the denominator. One thing about rational functions, in the graphing of them, there's certain things called asymptotes. So an asymptote is just an invisible line that the graph approaches, but it doesn't cross. So the only asymptote that we're going to have to worry about with a rational function in this case, so we have three examples that we're going to do. And in this case, we're just worried about the horizontal asymptote. So when you're graphing, if you have a graph, there's going to be a horizontal asymptote. So what that means, and I'm doing this as a dotted line, so what that means is that your graph will approach it, that horizontal asymptote, but it won't cross it. So with any rational function, you're going to have basically, let me erase this, you basically have a shape that looks like this. So in your basic rational function, so if we have a rational function of 1 over x, you can see that the x can't be 0 because the x is in the denominator. So that is where our horizontal asymptote comes in. Okay, so in this case, in just your basic function, you have a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. So you have this part of your function and you have this part of your function. So in the examples that were given in our MyMathLab, you're going to only deal with a certain value. So they're giving you domain restrictions. So I believe in the first one, you have, it goes between 1 and 30. So you're going to be able to have some limitations on it. So if it's only between 1 and 30, then all we have to deal with is that part of the equation. Now, there's a couple different ways that you can graph, and I want to introduce you to a website, or it's actually an app. You can download it on your phone if you want to use it. It's a graphing calculator. If you have a graphing calculator, that's great. You can just use it. But if you want to download one, it's free. It's called Desmos, DESMOS.com. So you can either download it. It's on the Google Play or your Apple store. I don't know much about Apple, but DESMOS. It's a great graphing tool. Okay, so it's a graphing calculator. You can use it. It's free, and it actually helps you graph. Now, if you don't have access to a graphing calculator, you can graph fairly easily, knowing that a rational function has this characteristic, just like a quadratic has the characteristic of a parabola. Then you can pretty much guess what the graph is going to look like just by plotting a few points. So in MyMathLab, it talks about using a table of values. So you have your x and you have your f of x, and you can actually just randomly pick values. You're going to have domain restrictions. So like on number 1, I believe it's 1 to 30. It may change a little bit depending on which version you get. But you can just use those values. Just pick some values between 1 and 30 and plot points. You know it's going to have this type of shape to it. So you can kind of get a good idea of what it looks like. So if I was using this function right here, and I just wanted to pick plot points, and let's say that my x value is in between 1 and 30, here's what I would do. I would pick, I'll have it equal to, I'll pick 1. So 1 over 1 is 1. Then I'll go to 5. 1 over 5 is 1/5. then I'll go to 10. So I'm just randomly picking values for x, plugging it into my equation, and then solving it, just simplifying it. That's all I'm doing. And then I'll do 20, 1 over 20, and 30, 1 over 30. Well, you can see from my table of values that I'm going to be able to plot this fairly easily. So at 1, I get 1. At 5, I get 1/5. At 10, I get 1/10. At 20, I get 1/20th. And at 30, I get 1/30th. So you can see it just keeps getting closer and closer and closer to 0. It doesn't it approaches 0, but it doesn't equal 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this video, and I'm going to do 3 more videos. I'm going to do 1 video for every question in 2.4. It just is going to lead you right through the whole process, okay?